If the smoke had risen 30 seconds later, the cameras would have missed everything. They would have missed the moment the richest man on the rooftop stopped moving. They would have missed the men in tailored suits pushing past him to save themselves. And they would have missed the poor night cleaner who dropped her mop, ran back into the fire, and changed the future of an empire before sunrise. Stay with this story, because the woman they called invisible was about to expose a lie so expensive that board members would start betraying each other before the ashes cooled. But the first person to notice something was wrong was not a billionaire, a consultant, or an engineer. It was Asha Mensah, the 24-year-old cleaner assigned to the executive floors. She had arrived 3 hours early with a bucket, linen cloths, and a back that still ached from carrying water up 4 flights in the one-room building where she lived with her mother and younger brother. Asha knew how to make glass disappear under her hands. She knew how to remove footprints without leaving streaks. And because poor people survive by noticing what comfortable people ignore, she also knew when a place was pretending to be safe. At 5:40 p.m., while wiping the frame of the emergency stairwell door, Asha pressed the silver crash bar and felt it resist. Not fully locked, not fully free. It stuck, released, then stuck again. She frowned and pushed harder. The door opened halfway, scraping against a metal wedge someone had jammed beneath it to stop it from swinging in the wind. When she looked closer, she saw something worse. The glowing exit sign above the doorway was dead. No green light, no backup battery indicator, just dark plastic pretending to be equipment. Asha stepped back, stared, then turned toward the events team stringing decorative fabric across a column. "Madam Lena," she called to the operations supervisor, a woman in a navy suit holding 3 phones at once. "The stair door is catching, and this light is not working." Lena did not even look up. "Asha, tonight is not the night for drama. Maintenance has already signed off." "It is not drama," Asha said. "If smoke comes, people will rush there." Now Lena looked at her, but only the way employers look at poor workers when they want silence more than truth. "Then pray no smoke comes. Finish the glass. VIP guests are arriving." Asha lowered her eyes, because poor people are trained to survive the moment before they are heard. But as she returned to the windows, she glanced again at the stairwell and felt the tightness in her stomach settle there like a stone. Near the bar, 2 contractors argued under their breath. "I told him the panel relay overheated during the dry run," one said. "And he told you to patch it after the speech," the other answered. "We are not paid to panic. We are paid to deliver." At 6:31 p.m., Malik took the stage. The city behind him burned orange with sunset. The speech was part corporate vision, part national promise. Affordable power, cleaner grids, African infrastructure built by African talent. The crowd applauded at every line designed to travel well online. Asha, standing by a service door, noticed that the decorative fabric near the stage base trembled once as if something behind it had kicked. Seconds later, a smell reached her, faint and sharp. Not perfume, not grilled meat, hot plastic. Her head snapped toward the stage rig. A thin gray ribbon slipped from beneath the platform and vanished in the evening light. Asha put down the tray and moved quickly toward Lena. "There is smoke under the stage," she said. Lena's jaw clenched. "Not now." "There is smoke." "Then tell technical quietly. Do not create a scene." Asha turned and nearly collided with a technician carrying a coiled cable. "Sir, please, under the stage." He crouched, peeked beneath the black fabric, and swore under his breath. "Who overloaded this relay?" Before he could finish, the stage lights flickered. Once, twice. Then a sharp pop cracked through the speakers, and the entire rooftop audio system died. Guests gasped. The jazz trio fell silent. Malik looked up, instantly alert, because silence in a room that should be producing sound had always meant danger to him faster than it meant confusion. The emergency strobes should have activated immediately. They did not. Instead, sparks burst from the side of the platform. Decorative fabric caught like paper. Flame raced along the trim. Someone screamed. The crowd lurched backward in one violent motion, a single wealthy organism choosing itself over order. Waiters dropped trays. A man in a white dinner jacket shoved past an elderly donor. Two women kicked off heels and ran toward the stairwell. The fire alarm wailed somewhere inside the building, but on the rooftop, the speakers were dead. The visual alert system remained dark, and smoke began to fold itself across the ceiling overhang in thick black waves. Asha was already running. Not away from the smoke, toward the jammed stairwell door she had warned them about. The first guests reached it and slammed against each other. Someone pushed the crash bar. It stuck. Another man cursed and rammed his shoulder into the frame. The metal wedge under the door held it half closed, and panic did the rest. Bodies compressed, breath shortened. A woman cried that they were trapped. Asha dropped to her knees, yanked at the wedge with both hands, and felt it grind against the tile. "Move back!" she shouted. Nobody listened. She braced one foot against the wall, pulled harder, and the wedge tore free, scraping skin from her knuckles. The door swung open 5 inches, then jammed again because the top hinge had shifted from heat. Smoke rolled thicker across the ceiling. Somewhere behind her, a glass panel exploded. When Asha turned, she saw Malik near the stage edge, not moving with the flow of bodies. He had headed toward the secondary exit, the one marked by a dead sign, and found only a service corridor filled with smoke. He pivoted back, scanning faces, trying to read mouths in chaos. No one was looking at him. A man collided with his shoulder and kept running. Another guest snatched a handbag from the floor and ignored the burning trim climbing the stage wall. The wealth on that rooftop had become animal fear. Then the first blast came. It was not a cinematic explosion. It was smaller, uglier, more believable. One of the battery display units under the platform vented with a violent metallic thud. The shockwave punched flames sideways. A column of fire shot across the decorative wall, and Malik lost his footing on spilled champagne and broken glass. He went down hard, striking his temple against the chrome base of a planter. When he tried to rise, his left leg folded under him. The smoke thickened. The crowd surged away from him as if pain were contagious. Asha saw all of it in less than 2 seconds. She also saw Kellen at the opposite side of the roof, one hand over his mouth, being pulled by security toward the elevator lobby. He looked directly toward Malik. Directly. Then he turned away. Asha did not think about courage, because courage is a word people use afterward, when they did not feel the heat themselves. She thought only, "He cannot hear where safety is." Then she ran. By now the wind had shifted, driving smoke low across the tiles. Asha wrapped the edge of her cleaning cloth over her nose and dropped near the ground. "Sir!" she shouted, though she knew shouting might not help him. Malik was on one elbow, vision blurred, trying to focus through smoke and flashing reflection from the burning stage. Asha slid in front of him and waved both arms until he locked onto her face. "Look at me," she said, speaking slowly, clearly, the way she had once learned from a deaf seamstress in her neighborhood. "Stay with me. Follow my hand." Malik blinked through the pain. Blood tracked from his temple. She pointed to herself, then toward the stairwell, then mimed breathing low. Understanding flickered across his face. He tried to stand, failed. His leg would not take weight. Asha turned, crouched, and hooked one of his arms across her shoulders. He was taller and heavier than she expected, all dead weight and expensive fabric. Behind them, another battery unit popped and sprayed sparks. The heat bit through her uniform. Two security men rushed past with a board director between them. Neither stopped. "Help me!" Asha screamed. So Asha dragged Malik alone. The distance from the stage to the stairwell could not have been more than 12 meters. That night, it felt longer than a lifetime. Malik tried to push with his good leg. Asha slid, braced, pulled, and nearly fell twice on spilled ice and shards of bottle glass. Every breath tasted electrical. When they reached the stair door, a cluster of guests had already jammed the opening from the inside, trying to force themselves through one narrow point. People were sobbing, shoving, choking. No order, no staff, no command. Asha looked once at the door, once at Malik, and made a decision that later journalists would call impossible and lawyers would call critical. She abandoned the main stair. To the far right of the rooftop was a maintenance passage used by window wash crews. A narrow steel walkway leading to an exterior service ladder and a locked equipment vestibule on the floor below. Asha had cleaned that passage twice. She knew the latch. She also knew no guest would think to use it. She pulled Malik's sleeve until he followed her gaze. "Other way," she said, pointing hard. "With me." He nodded once. The walkway gate was secured with a sliding bolt and a cheap padlock looped open through one side. Decorative lighting cable had been tied across it to keep photographers away. Asha ripped the cable loose, shoved the gate, and felt it resist. For one terrifying second, she thought it had fused from heat. Then it gave. Wind slammed smoke behind them. Beneath the rooftop, Nairobi spread in dizzying distance, headlights threading through darkness. Malik's hand tightened on her wrist. "Eyes on me," she said. "Not down." Asha went first, one rung down, then another, keeping Malik's injured leg clear. He moved with clenched determination, jaw rigid against pain. Above them, flame licked over the rooftop parapet and turned the smoke orange. Below them, alarms finally began to flash inside offices where no one remained to see them. When Asha reached the ledge, she threw herself at the utility handle. Locked. Her stomach dropped. She tried again. Nothing. Malik reached the ledge beside her, face ashen. For half a second, the whole city seemed to pause around them. Above, rich people screamed. Below, 62 floors of glass reflected a burning sky. Asha pressed her ear to the metal and heard nothing. No footsteps, no responders, no God entering the story on time. Then she remembered the janitor's ring. Every night, supervisor carried duplicate mechanical keys on a red lanyard, and old Mr. Kamau, who cleaned the boardrooms, always hid his spare in the outdoor drain cabinet because he hated climbing back for it. Asha spun left, kicked open the small steel cabinet used for hose valves, and plunged her hand into cobwebs, dust, and rusted fittings. Her fingers brushed metal. She yanked out the red lanyard and nearly cried from relief. The third key turned. The utility door opened into darkness and cold concrete air. Asha dragged Malik inside just as a burst of sparks rained down from the rooftop above. They collapsed against the wall of a service corridor lined with paint cans and coiled hoses. For the first time since the smoke began, Malik could breathe without swallowing fire. He looked at Asha and signed something with shaking hands. She caught only one word she recognized from the seamstress who had taught her. Why? Asha stared at him, chest heaving. "Because you were there," she said. Sirens reached them 20 seconds later. In that version, an unexpected technical malfunction had occurred during a private demonstration. Evacuation procedures had worked promptly. No mention of the dead exit sign. No mention of the jammed door. No mention of the disabled chief executive nearly being abandoned by his own event staff. Most important, no mention of Asha. By 1:15 a.m., Asha understood the cover-up had begun. She was in a maintenance room on the 20th floor, washing soot from her arms, when Lena entered with a man from corporate security named Bryce. He had the broad shoulders and flat voice of someone used to sounding official on behalf of other people's cowardice. He placed a printed statement on the table. "We need a quick incident note for insurance," he said. "Sign here to confirm you were carrying chemical solvent near the stage minutes before ignition." Asha looked up slowly. "I was carrying water glasses." "It is a standard form. It says I may have contributed to the fire." Bryce spread his hands. "No one is blaming you. We are simplifying the narrative. Poor people know when polite language is just violence in a tie." Asha stepped back from the table. "I will not sign that." Lena exhaled, as if disappointed in a child. "Asha, listen carefully. These situations become messy. If you cooperate, the company can appreciate your service. If you become difficult, agencies stop calling. Nairobi is small when powerful people are embarrassed." Asha thought of her mother's blood pressure medicine, her brother's school fees, the rent due in 6 days. Then she thought of Malik lying in smoke while men in suits ran around him like his life belonged to legal wording. "I said no." Bryce folded the paper once, very neatly. "Then hand over your staff badge. Effective immediately, you were suspended pending investigation." He held out his palm. Asha unclipped the badge and placed it there. Her fingers trembled only after he left. At St. Catherine's Hospital, Malik woke at 2:42 a.m. to filtered light, pain medication, and his mother's frightened face. Sarah Dubé loved her son in the anxious way powerful families love the one member who forces them to think beyond appearance. She signed clumsily, "Are you safe?" He answered, "For now." Then he wrote on a notepad, "Who brought me out?" By morning, the official press release had been sent. By afternoon, the internal safety server had been scrubbed. The rooftop visual alarm maintenance ticket vanished first. Then the stage contractor's overheating complaint disappeared. At 3:06 p.m., someone using executive override credentials deleted the original fire inspection upload log and replaced it with a clean certificate time-stamped 2 days earlier. They would have buried more if they had known about Moses. Moses Olu was a junior building systems analyst with the unfortunate ethics of a man who still believed backups mattered. At 3:11 p.m., while reviewing network strain from the fire, he noticed a series of unusual deletions from the facility's server. He copied the access logs to a private encrypted drive before telling anyone, because one lesson every honest employee learns early is this: if the powerful are deleting evidence in daylight, they are counting on your fear after dark. Asha froze. "What did you tell them?" "That my daughter does not sell truth before breakfast." Asha almost laughed, almost cried. Instead, she sat beside her mother and stared at the floor. The second car came at dusk. "Cannot identify?" Asha asked. The lawyer nodded. "Trauma affects memory." "And if I remember clearly?" "Then remember privately." Asha handed back the pen. The lawyer's smile disappeared. "You should not confuse a dramatic night with permanent importance. Stories cool, rent does not." After he left, Adjoa locked the door and slid the chain across. "These are not normal people," she whispered. "No," Asha said. "They are afraid." At Mwangaza headquarters, fear wore better perfume. Malik entered the room on crutches before the motion could pass. Every conversation died. He took his seat without greeting anyone and placed 3 objects on the table. The dead emergency sign battery removed from the rooftop, a printed photograph of the jammed stair door taken by a firefighter, and a page torn from his notebook. On it, he had written in black ink, "I was not saved by security." He looked around the table, one face at a time. Then he signed for his interpreter. "Who is lying to me?" Silence can be louder than shouting when guilt is seated. Kellen recovered first. "We are still gathering facts." Malik signed again, slower. "Then gather the woman who brought me out." No one answered. Nia arrived 2 days later in a cream suit and sensible shoes, studied the preliminary files for 12 minutes, and said the sentence that changed the mood of the whole case. "This report is too clean. Real disasters are untidy. Somebody ironed this one." She started with the workers. Asha did not trust her at first. Rich lawyers often spoke the language of justice the way advertisers speak the language of love. But Nia came to Kariobangi herself, without cameras, without assistance, and without promising miracles. She only placed a voice recorder on the table and said, "Tell me what happened from the moment you noticed the exit sign." Asha told her everything. The dead sign, the jammed door, the smell under the stage, the technician's complaint, the crowd, Malik on the floor, Kellen seeing him and turning away, the false statement, the hush money. Nia listened without interrupting until one detail stopped her pen. "The utility door on 62, she said. "How did you open it?" "Janitor's spare key from the drain cabinet." Nia leaned back. "Good. That means your route can be verified." The next 48 hours peeled the story open. Kellen tried to dismiss it as inconclusive. Then Moses released a second file. That phrase began to circulate quietly through the company like poison through clear water. They settled on Asha. Asha read the posts in silence until her thumbs stopped moving. Then she put the phone down and said, "If lies are this organized, truth must be very expensive." Nia answered, "That is why we invoice by the hour." Malik did not laugh. He was watching the window wash footage again in a dark conference room, frame by frame, trying to hold on to the one face memory had blurred. He remembered Asha's eyes more than her features, steady, unafraid, in the exact place where fear should have won. "Bring her in," he signed. Asha kept her hands folded. "They told me many things." He nodded. "Thank you for ignoring most of them." For a moment, neither moved. Then Malik bowed his head, not dramatically, just enough to make the truth visible. "You saved my life." Asha's expression tightened, because gratitude is complicated when it arrives after intimidation. "I did what everyone should have done." "Yes," Malik said, "but you were the only one who did it." He asked her to walk him through the rooftop minute by minute. She did. When she reached the moment Kellen looked toward him and turned away, Malik's face did not change. That frightened Nia more than if he had shouted. Controlled men with evidence are far more dangerous than emotional men with suspicions. Still, the company needed proof strong enough to survive court, regulators, investors, and family loyalty. Proof arrived through vanity. He handed over 3 memory cards. The second card contained 26 seconds that detonated the whole cover-up. No legal team on earth could rephrase that into loyalty. He arrived prepared for negotiation. He was not prepared for the room. Kellen opened with confidence. Before rumors outrun facts, I want to restate my commitment to Malik, to this company, and to the thousands of employees who depend on our stability. Naya tapped a remote. The screen lit up. No preamble, no warning, just the footage. On screen, smoke rolled. Guests ran. Kellen looked at Malik, grabbed the guard, redirected him, and left his cousin behind. Then Asha appeared through the haze like the part of conscience money cannot buy. No one spoke when the clip ended. Naya let the silence harden. Then she placed 3 printed transcripts on the table: the badge terminal audio, the restored deletion log, and the contractor message reading, "Relay overheating. We should delay. Kellen says patch and continue." Finally, she turned toward Asha. "Please tell the board what happened after the rescue." Asha stood. Her voice did not shake. "I was asked to sign a false statement blaming myself for the fire. I was suspended when I refused. A lawyer came to my home with money and an agreement saying I saw no safety failures and could not identify who helped Mr. Dubé. The door was jammed before the fire. The exit sign was dead before the fire. The relay issue was known before the fire, and when Mr. Dubé fell, people with titles ran past him." She looked directly at the directors one by one. "I am poor. I am not confused." That line would lead the evening news. "Whether this becomes negligence, fraud, or obstruction will depend on what else we find," he said. "But from where I sit, the company's bigger problem is cultural. Too many people here believed worker testimony could be bent because her salary was small." Malik rose before the vote. He did not shout. He did not perform pain. He simply rested both hands on the table and signed while speaking aloud in measured English. "Accessibility is not a favor. Safety is not public relations. And family is not the same thing as protection when truth is inconvenient." He turned toward Kellen. "You did not leave me in fire because you were afraid. You left me because in your mind, the company could survive my injury more easily than it could survive a delayed deal." Kellen's mouth opened. Nothing useful came out. The board voted to suspend him pending formal investigation. The motion passed by a margin even his allies did not expect. Bryce and Lena were placed on administrative leave. External forensic auditors took control of the safety server before sunset. The insurer froze part of the event liability coverage. By evening, news outlets across Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, and beyond were carrying the same simple contrast. Billionaire abandoned, cleaner returns through fire. But the most important change did not happen on television. It happened inside the company when ordinary workers started sending messages. A cover-up survives on silence. Once silence cracks, paperwork catches fire faster than curtains. The public understood it more plainly. Rich people had built a glamorous trap and expected workers to die quietly inside it. And Asha? Then she did something nobody on the board had predicted. She enrolled in evening classes for occupational safety and emergency planning. When a radio host asked why, Asha answered, "Because I do not want the next poor worker to need courage before someone wealthy believes her." That quote traveled farther than the fire footage. Asha did not attend as staff. She attended as a consultant. When she stepped onto the rooftop this time, cameras noticed, but she ignored them. Her gaze went first to the old stairwell door. It opened cleanly with one push. She checked the secondary route. She checked the utility lock. She checked the visual alarms until a nervous junior manager finally said, "Miss Mensah, everything has been tested twice." Asha replied, "Good. People usually say that before I test it myself." Malik heard about the remark and smiled for the first time that afternoon without effort. Later, during the private reception, he found her standing near the east rail where the city glowed below like a promise that had survived being nearly broken. "Do you still think everyone should have done what you did?" he asked. Asha considered the skyline. "Yes." "And do you still think everyone would?" This time she took longer. "No. But now they know what it costs when they don't." They stood in silence that did not need filling. That was the real reason this story traveled. Not because a billionaire almost died. Cities produce powerful men every day. And long after the smoke was gone, that sentence kept burning in every room where powerful people hoped a worker's testimony would be cheaper than accountability. So remember this the next time a building shines too brightly, a launch looks too perfect, or a person carrying a tray says something is wrong. Disasters do not begin with flames. They begin with warnings that important people decide are inconvenient. By the time everyone sees the fire, the real emergency has usually been burning for hours. Instead, one cleaner went back. One witness refused the script written for her. One company discovered that the most dangerous person in a cover-up is not always a rival executive or a hostile regulator. Sometimes it is the woman you trained yourself not to notice. And that is how, on a night meant to celebrate power, the least powerful person in the building became the reason power had to answer for itself. Weeks later, when the Parliamentary Labor Committee invited Asha to speak about emergency compliance in private venues, she almost declined. She had never sat in a room where microphones waited for her opinion. But Nia told her something worth carrying. If they only hear from lawyers, they will draft better language. If they hear from you, they may finally draft better behavior. So Asha went. She wore a simple charcoal suit, borrowed again, and answered questions that men with titles had avoided for years. She explained how workers are trained to notice danger but punished for naming it too early. She described the tiny humiliations that make disasters possible. Managers who call warnings negativity. Supervisors who treat safety checks as decoration. Executives who believe a poor person must choose between honesty and hunger. When one committee member asked what reform mattered most, Asha did not mention money, headlines, or prison. She said, "Give the lowest-paid worker a direct route to be heard before smoke appears. After smoke, everyone pretends they were always listening." That sentence entered the committee summary. Then it entered policy recommendations. Then it entered staff training slides across industries that had never expected a cleaner from Kariobangi to alter how they thought about authority. Hotels called, hospitals called, conference centers called. Some wanted real change, some only wanted the appearance of it. Asha learned to tell the difference by one simple sign. The serious clients asked where their blind spots were. The unserious ones asked how to reassure investors without disrupting the event experience. She refused the second type. The strange thing about surviving public lies is that afterward you become expensive to deceive. Asha could now hear the shape of manipulation before most people finished speaking. She heard it in apology letters that accepted regret but not fault. She heard it in executives who praised courage while quietly punishing dissent. She heard it in consultants who loved the phrase "lessons learned" as long as the lesson did not affect this quarter's numbers. And each time she heard it, she remembered the rooftop heat, the dead sign, and the soundless moment when a powerful man decided another man's life could wait. That memory never left Malik either. In interviews, he was repeatedly asked whether the fire had changed him. He always answered with inconvenient precision. "No," he said. "It revealed the cost of things I had already been arguing about." He said the problem was never one night alone. The problem was a culture that confused polish with preparedness and treated accessibility as branding until emergency proved otherwise. That answer changed the next law.